Welcome to the first episode of Cattle Chatter. I'm Susan Littlefield right here on the American Ag Network. Excited because Brad Kooima is going to be joining us on this adventure as we dive into the ins and the outs, the whys and the hows, and the sometimes taking off that cowboy hat and scratching your head, wondering what's going on in this marketplace. Lots of things that we're going to look in today, including some passing on prices ahead of a cattle on feed report. We'll, of course, look at other factors weighing in, including where the cattle are and how we're going to see ourselves moving forward post Easter, which means time for some serious grilling season to be underway. As I mentioned, it is Brad Kooima. Brad is with Kooima and Varilek. He is based out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And let's start out the fact that waiting on the cash, Monday, everybody was saying, Brad, oh, it's going to be steady at best. We're going to really look at some negativity moving into this cash price. And the proof in the pudding today, you guys are all passing on some bids.
Got that right. It's fun. It's fun when it goes your way, right? First of all, though, great to be back on, Susan. I missed you. You and I are not strangers, and this is my favorite show to do. So I am excited to get back on here together. So let's have some fun. That's what this is supposed to be about, right?
Yep.
So starting with what you left off with was the cash market, which I think if your listeners don't remember, I'm kind of a fundamentalist first. I also can appreciate the fact that I understand that one has to be sensitive to the technical part of the market because that's what the funds are, and the funds are a big part of our market. Okay, but so I'm the old guy that still cares about fundamentals, and one of the things that I've said before, and I'll say it again, is that, and people can argue with me, and that's fine. I don't care, but I think that old trading friend of mine, one of my favorite guys, Charlie McVeigh, used to say that every market begins and ends in Iowa. And I would say, Iowa, we're not that big a deal. He says, yeah, you are, because you make up the North makes up 20 to 25% of the supply, and our supply is elastic. In other words, it changes because we feed calves that are born in the North. It's seasonal. And when we're behind, everybody's behind. And when we fight the market's usually in trouble. But conversely, when we're current and when we're pulled forward like we are now, and we have been for a long time, we've got good weather. We pulled the yearlings ahead. We love the price that we got for the yearlings. In fact, when we bought the yearlings, we thought there's no way these are going to work, but we bought them anyway. And in here, they were making a lot of money, and we couldn't wait to sell them. Now, you're starting the same thing where yearlings are largely cleaned up. Calves aren't ready yet, although I've sold a couple calf deals already. They don't weigh much, but the economics of it are pretty tempting, to just go ahead and take the money. So when you've got leverage is what I'm talking about. When you have the ability to pass bids that you don't like, which is the way we started out this week. I thought we had a real shot at being higher, and it's fun to be, it's fun to see it happen. As we just went on the air, my partner stuck his head in the door and he said that the South is now bid 210. They got 204 last week.
Wow.
That's up $6. I know. My brother just texted me before we started as well that he's bid 212. At this point, he's not even taking that. 208 is what we got last week. So we got obviously a cash-led rally, and that helps. Feeder cattle had a little jazz here today too. If you notice the April feeders, the index is going to be up over $5. So that's what some of the smoke is on that market today too.
It's nice to see. And I mean, I know the fact that the North continues to be very tight on their cattle. Does that cause some concerns, do you see, as we head into, summer and some prime grilling season?
Well, no, I guess concern isn't. If I was a packer, I'd be real concerned. I'll tell you that. I mean, the reality is that there's just not enough to go around, and so what happens in that environment? And I get asked this question a lot, Susan. So, how long before how long before a packer has to close, like Plainview, Texas, like Denison, Iowa? Okay, I'm old enough to remember both of those very distinctly. And I'm going like, well, it's a great question, but the irony of it is not only plants are not closing, we're opening new ones. They just had the ribbon cutting here the other day at North Platte. You got the one in Missouri that's coming online. The curious timing. Someone's going to have to go without, or they're going to fight for it. So, packer margins are poor. Hey, my margins were really poor during COVID. So, I mean, I'm really not over it. I'm not sending any sympathy cards. It is what it is. Sometimes I think the market should be viewed as a pie instead of something else, that there's so much to go around. Sometimes the cow calf makes a lot of money. He's doing it now. He deserves it. Sometimes the feeder makes a little bit. Usually a big short chunk of that pie though is packer and retailer. Well, you know what? Maybe it's our turn to have a big share of that pie this time. That's what I think is happening. Still no indication of expansion. We're going to have tight supply for a while, Susan.
Well, and you look at everything that's been building up to this point, and I've talked in the past about the economy and the consumer confidence. They have not backed off. I mean, as they go into this Easter holiday and beyond, they're still putting that beef in the cart.
I couldn't agree more, Susan, and well said, because I had to do a couple of presentations here where I put together the PowerPoint like a real guy. I mean, normally I'm off the cuff. This kind of thing's perfect for me. I can kind of roll with it. But and I spent several slides on trying to talk about the demand feature, okay, or the demand part of the equation, because we can get to supply if you're willing to work at it. We can get to the supply. Demand is different, but so I measure it by what I see today. And there's a couple of things I think that we can talk about in that regard. One, during COVID, we educated a whole segment of the population that you can cook your steak at home and you can do it twice or three times a week for the same cost of doing it on Saturday night where you've got to go down. Instead of going out, you can do it at home because they couldn't, because the COVID and everything was closed. Two, you've got a flat to declining demand line for pork and a very flat line on poultry, where at the same time, the last several years, you've got this increase. Now, why? Bigger middle class, better product, probably a better tasting product, maybe. Nothing personal against the pork and the poultry guys, but it is what it is. The other thing that's been driving the demand, which I find quite interesting, is that the middle meats are actually almost the same price as a year ago. What isn't the same price is the expensive hamburger, the good hamburger, the 90 and the 93%. It's 75, 80 cents higher than a year ago, and the people are still buying it. It looks like that's where that price point consumer has gone to. You can only do the poultry and the pork so often, but hamburger's versatile. It's good. And that seems to be kind of carrying the water right now.
So, what's the normal basis this time of year since we're talking money at this point?
It's a great question, and I may have spent too much time on that this week. I've been doing quite a bit of analytics on that. It doesn't appear to be very right, however. Like you had said in the intro, that sometimes you pull your hat off and you puzzle about the market. So I'm a little surprised in a good way. So I did look at the last 10 years of basis for this time of year and using June futures against cash the middle of April. I threw out the COVID year because the basis was $30 then, and because I don't think that that's a good example of normal markets. But throwing that out, the basis is $15.52, I believe. I don't have it written down right here in my back office here, but that means cash over June. So if cash was 210, you would not be surprised to see June at 195. But June's at 203. And I'm just telling you now that cash is 210 in the South. So basis is much narrower than normal now. But is that a tradable piece of news? Hey, I'm friendly to the market. Anybody knows that. But to me, the June looks, unless cash really takes off, and maybe that's what the June is trying to tell us might happen here. I said to you before that I thought we were going to make new highs on the cash sometime in May, and I haven't seen anything to make me change my mind there. If that last move maybe is more cash than futures, wouldn't surprise me to make that basis a little more wider. Yeah, hey, the uncertainty isn't gone. I mean, it's not like we've put this whole fear of trade war, China. Does it create the potential for recession? I don't think anybody in their right mind can say, "Oh, I'm not worried about that at all anymore." I mean, I think it's still real, and we're going to be talking about this for a long time yet. So be a little careful. Like I've been saying, stay friendly and keep an eye on buying some puts.
So, how is cattle holding it all together at this point?
100%. I think, and every segment of it. I mean, go to a feeder cattle auction. You want to see where buyers meeting, where stuff true price discovery. They're hiring a drafts dentist, and continuing to drive that feeder cattle trade higher. I do wonder as we move toward post Easter. Mother's Day is the biggest beef feature weekend of the whole year, by the way. Go buy your mom a New York strip. That seems to be the motto usually. I would expect you're going to see a nice increase in that cutout value, and maybe that'll help keep the packer from being so grumpy.
Well, as we wrap up this first edition of Cattle Chatter, I got to get your thoughts on the lack of moisture. We're going to be putting cows and calves on pasture, and I know in the Western Corn Belt, they're saying 5 to 10 inches of rain is needed to pull us out of drought. Do you have any concerns, or have you heard any chatter about that in that regard?
Yes, and unfortunately, where you are is the start of the problem. I mean, you central and western Nebraska are critically dry to the point where hopefully you get some rain out of this system. But you said it, an inch of rain in April doesn't cut it. The grass will turn green, but we got to get these ponds filled back up. We got to get some subsoil moisture, and that dry spot is southwest South Dakota, a lot, if not most of Wyoming, the whole western half of Nebraska, parts of Kansas. I don't know if we can liquidate a cow herd any further than we have. So I would suppose it's a great question. I wish I had a better answer. I would think that the rancher would do whatever he could to try to figure out a way, even if he has to dry out his cows, but he's not going to turn out calves if this is going to happen. So you're going to see an adjustment again of when those cattle go on feed. They'll be on feed longer because they'll be lighter. I talked to several guys that said, "Hey, I'm not going to make yearlings this year. I'm going to sell them as calves because I'm afraid I don't have enough feed." So it's very real. I hope it changes for them. It's a way of life for them. I hope they get enough moisture to be able to do what they love to do.
Well, hopefully next week when we can talk about some decent moisture that moved in through the Easter holiday. Brad, what's the best way for our listeners and viewers to reach out to you?
The phone is 712-722-0023, or you can find out about all you need to know about us on kkvtrading.com.
All right, that is another edition of Cattle Chatter. I'm Susan Littlefield with the American Ag Network.
The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.